Hi, everybody. I'm Samantha Gladish, and I am a hormone nutritionist. And today I'm going to spend time talking about how you can optimize your hormonal health to support fertility. And the first place that I really want to start today is by talking about the menstrual cycle. So I'm sure we're all familiar with our menstrual cycle, but I want to break it down in a little bit more detail so that you could just really have a basic understanding of the different phases that happen within your cycle, because it's really important to optimize your cycle, because this is going to play the biggest role in pregnancy and fertility health. So your cycle is broken up. Some people like to break it up into 3 phases or 4 phases. I like to go with 4. So what I mean by that is you have your follicular phase, your ovulation, your luteal, and then your menstruation. Okay, so that's typically what that looks like. Now, your follicular phase is typically going to be from typically day 1 to 14 of your cycle. Now, that's going to vary because everybody's cycle length will look different. So it's really important to be tracking your period from month to month so you can actually gauge the length of time your cycle is. So typically we hear the norm is 28 days, but that's not always the case. Some women may be closer to 26-day cycle, whereas some might be anywhere from 32 to 35 days. Now, we really want to be monitoring this because we don't want to be below 26 days and we definitely don't want to be above 35 days. Now, sometimes stress and different life events may happen that may cause our cycle to be a little bit wonky, here and there. And the days may, we might go from a 26-day cycle to a 29-day cycle. But overall, we should really be having an average. And what that average is going to look like for everybody is going to be different. Okay. But if your cycle is too short or if your cycle is too long, we really want to be diving in and looking at that, because that could mean that there are issues going on with sex hormone production, with your estrogen or progesterone. There could be too little estrogen or too much. There could be too little progesterone or too much. And there could be issues with the thyroid as well. So making sure that you're monitoring and tracking your cycle is so key, because this is going to really help you along your fertility journey. So follicular phase, this is typically from day 1 to 14. Day 1 is really the day that you bleed. That's the beginning of your cycle. And that could last anywhere from 5 to 7 days, sometimes 3 to 7 days. Again, it really varies for everybody. It's really important during your actual bleed time that you pay attention to what that looks like. Is it very light? Is it really heavy? Are you using pads or tampons and you're saturating too many and there's a lot of, pad changes throughout the day? Because that could really be a sign that there could be too much estrogen, potentially leading to a heavier flow. And that rise in estrogen could mean that the progesterone is a little bit too low. And that's really important because that progesterone is pro-gestation. It's actually going to help support fertility. So we really want to make sure these hormones are in a healthy balance, and we can really monitor and assess that by looking at your blood flow and the length of your cycle. So that follicular phase in that first half, we basically, within those first few days, the day 1 is the first day of bleeding. This is considered right at the beginning of the cycle. And then your period, like I said, can last anywhere from 3 to 7 days on average, give or take. And then this is where often your bleeding will normally be the heaviest within those first 2 days, and then should typically taper off from there. And that's going to typically be, between that first day to day 7. And then we go and we transition from basically day 8 to about day 14, day 15. And this is basically as our body and our hormones are leading us up to this ovulation phase. Ovulation is so powerful and important because this is where pregnancy can happen. And there's always a lot of confusion around ovulation and getting pregnant. Technically, we ovulate on one day of the month, meaning that there's really one opportunity in the cycle and within the month for us to get pregnant. But sperm can live within a 3 to 5 day window, prior to ovulation or after. So there can be an opportunity there, but really we have this one day of ovulation. So I feel like So many young teenage girls are not taught about their menstrual cycle, and there's a lot of anxiety around getting pregnant all the time. Now, maybe in your teenage years, because your cycle could be very erratic and all over the place, there could be more of an opportunity and chance for getting pregnant. But I am finding that still the lack of education that's happening in this space is so significant, because women who are even in their 20s and 30s and beyond still aren't comprehending, the cycle, their cycle phases and ovulation. And again, thinking that pregnancy may happen a lot quicker for them. And then they go through this journey of trying to get pregnant. And there can sometimes be this disappointment because they just didn't understand, their cycle and their cycle length and what ovulation really means. And so it's so important that we understand our bodies, and hopefully over time, the education system and the school board will really start to educate younger women and families and women around this information, so that we could really be connected on a deeper level to our bodies and our hormones and our cycles. And so going back to ovulation, this is really where our body is preparing for pregnancy. The uterine lining is going to become thicker and enriched with a lot of blood and nutrients. And somewhere around that day 14 mark, day 15, again, it's going to vary for everybody when they ovulate, because everybody's cycle length will be different. So somebody who has a 35-day cycle, you may be ovulating a little bit later. It may not be around day 14, 15. It might be a little bit later. Whereas if you have a shorter cycle, typically day 13 to 14 may be that ovulation date for you. But again, it's going to vary. And so around that ovulation time, this is where the egg is released from one of your ovaries, and it's going to begin its journey down the fallopian tube to the uterus. And if there is sperm present and in the fallopian tube, there could be fertilization that occurs at this time. And if the fertilized egg, if there is a fertilized egg, it will travel to the uterus and attempt to implant in the uterine wall. And then if the egg is not fertilized at this time and implantation does not occur, then there's going to be these hormonal changes that are going to signal the uterus to basically shed the lining. And that's when we actually start to bleed and the egg breaks down and we shed that lining, and then we begin our period. And that cycle begins every single month. So what you can do to really optimize all these different phases and parts in your cycle is, number one, to eat a really nutritious diet. Your hormones need nutrients. Your sex hormones, your estrogen, your progesterone, even your testosterone, even though women have lower amounts of testosterone than men do, we still have some, and it's still very important. And to really support and optimize our thyroid gland is this butterfly-shaped gland in the base of our neck, and it really does govern the metabolism of our ovaries and supports fertility. And how we can optimize the thyroid and our sex hormones is by eating a really clean whole foods diet. So focus on getting really good quality proteins, fats, and carbohydrates into your diet. So what this looks like is, if you are omnivore, focusing on ideally grass-fed and pasture-raised meats, and not just eating muscle meats. I think a lot of us get caught up in eating like chicken breast or turkey, and steak, and those can tend to become a staple, but also trying to get some of those organ meats in. And I know that may not sound very exciting, but beef liver is so nutrient rich. It is loaded with vitamin A and copper and minerals and iron, all the things that you need for a healthy pregnancy and for fertility and just optimal hormonal health in general. So if we could focus food first, that's going to be so important than just popping all of these supplements. Supplements are very important and definitely necessary. We will need them during our pregnancy journey, but it's really important that we focus on the food first and we get all the nutrition from there as much as we possibly can. So omnivore, focusing on those animal proteins is going to be really important. And then also getting in really healthy fats from animal sources as well. So you can use grass-fed butter, you can use olive oil, avocados, avocado oil, tallow, ghee. These are all going to be really great options for fat sources, and not fearing saturated fat. We really need that saturated fat, even from eggs. It's really important. It fuels our brain, and our hormones need fat to function. And then I want you to think about good quality carbohydrates. So I always talk about roots and fruits. So we tend to get really caught up in carbohydrates like quinoa and rice and bread and pasta. And those can be very empty nutrients and empty calories, but focusing on roots and fruits is where you're going to get real mineral rich nutrition. And so sweet potato and different squashes and regular potato, carrots, berries, apples, pears, all of this is going to be really great and nutritive for your hormonal health and for your fertility journey. Plus, it's natural sweetness and it's natural sugar, and your body does need some of that form, that glucose. We just don't want to get it from, and we don't want to get the sugar from things like candies and cakes and breads and pasta all the time, because again, they're just not nutritious the way that roots and fruits are. And then, of course, if you are more plant-based, making sure you're getting in the protein. That is really essential. So some vegetarians may include eggs or some dairy. If you can get your hands on some raw milk and some raw dairy, that would be really great. Because yes, the pasteurization process can kill a lot of those nutrients that we need. But if you can't, at least focus on some organic dairy. That can still be helpful if you can tolerate dairy. Not everybody can. But beans and legumes, those are also going to be really great sources, and they're going to provide you with some really great fiber. So really focusing on that whole food diet is so essential. Our hormones and our fertility really need nutritious food. And that's going to really help stabilize your blood sugar, help balance your hormones, support the gut, and detox the liver. And all of that is involved when it comes to fertility. Next up, I really want you to think about stress that's going on in your life and really trying to monitor and manage that. And having just healthy boundaries, knowing when to say no, having good sleep, breathing exercises, meditation, all of this can be really great ways to manage and support stress going on in your life. We can't just completely get rid of our stress, and I understand that, but we do have to have some really healthy coping mechanisms in order to support our nervous system. If we have too much stress going on, it can lower progesterone, and we need that progesterone for pregnancy, okay, and for fertility. It's really important. A few other things to consider. Acupuncture can be very helpful. It actually has a very high success rate with fertility. So that could be something to consider. It's also really great for calming your adrenals and your nervous system. So that could be a really great thing to include for stress management. From a supplemental standpoint, magnesium is so important. It is one of my best friends, my favorite supplements. Taking magnesium is involved. Magnesium is involved in over 300 different processes in the body, if not more than that. And it's going to help with detoxification, hormonal health. It's also going to help with stress and anxiety and sleep. And it is definitely needed for fertility. So magnesium is so essential. And you can also get magnesium from eating green leafy veggies. So kale and Swiss chard, those are going to be some great sources as well. Another supplement that I absolutely love for fertility is cod liver oil. Now, it doesn't sound very exciting or very appealing, but you really need that good, healthy fat. And nowadays, all the different, fish oils on the market, they don't taste fishy. They actually have like lemon flavor or citrus. So don't worry about the taste. But cod liver oil specifically, because you're going to get some vitamin D and some vitamin K, as well as retinol, which is really important. And unfortunately, with retinol, it can only come from an animal source. There is no plant-based source of retinol. And we hear, so retinol is vitamin A. We hear a lot about beta carotene, which can convert into vitamin A, but it's very different than the actual retinol. So if you can get that cod liver oil in, you're really going to get that retinol, and that's going to be really powerful and therapeutic and supportive for your hormones. Okay, a few other things I've got on my list over here. You can consider hormone testing. So this could be really powerful to help you in your hormone journey. So going to see your doctor and getting them to run some hormone blood work is going to be really important. Testing your FSH can be really important, your estrogen, your progesterone, looking at all of that and just really having a conversation with your doctor about where you're at and what you're experiencing, and letting them know what your fertility journey looks like and your plans look like, and having your doctor on board to really help you run the proper testing. I really also suggest getting a full thyroid panel tested so that you can really understand the health of your thyroid. Often when we go for thyroid testing, we are only testing TSH, and that is just one small piece of the thyroid puzzle. So when it comes to thyroid testing, we want to not only test TSH, but we also want to be testing our free T4, our free T3, our reverse T3, and also looking at thyroid antibodies like the anti-TPO and the anti-TG. So those tests specifically are going to be really important, and they're going to give you a full thyroid picture, because again, your TSH does not show us the full picture, and your thyroid is really important when it comes to fertility and for pregnancy. And then one of the tests that I love to use, and we use it in our practice, is called a Dutch test. It is a urine test, and it's basically these strips that you pee on over a 12-hour period. And we can test hormones this way instead of actually doing blood work. And doing it through urine actually allows you to break down the hormone metabolites, which you cannot see through blood work. So I still recommend the blood work, but to really take a much deeper look is to also do the Dutch test as well. So like I said, it's a dried urine Dutch test. You basically are peeing on these strips over a 12-hour period. You let them dry and then you ship them off. And then it takes about 2 to 3 weeks before you get your results. And you can break down and look at your estrogen, your progesterone, your testosterone, also get a really clear picture of what's going on with your cortisol. You can look at how well your liver is detoxing and breaking down these hormones. So that's a really powerful test. I think that when it comes to fertility, the thing we really want to do is prepare ourselves. That's what's really important here, is thinking about what this fertility journey is going to look like. When are you thinking of getting pregnant? And, when you really want to start this family, what does that look like? Because you want to start that preparation right now. I think that that's where a lot of couples maybe wait a little bit too long, and your fertility journey starts right now. And cleaning up your diet and getting the proper testing and being on a really strategic supplement protocol, supporting your stress and, sleep and all of that, that is really going to help optimize your hormones, and it's going to increase your chances for fertility. And the more prepared you are, the easier the process and the journey can really be for you. So I hope that those tips are helpful for you. If you have any questions or you would like to connect with me, you can find me over at Holistic Wellness Foodie on Instagram. I always hang out there, and feel free to send me an email, samantha@holisticwellness.ca. Thanks so much for tuning into this today. I really hope it helped, and I'd love to hear from you.